planning. In this module, we'll start to get into the mechanics of actually putting together the project and planning it out. We've laid a lot of infrastructure and foundational items out there about leadership and organization and project selection, and now we're going to really start chewing into the details of really setting up a project. So a couple issues. One is the project charter. The project charter is actually a document. It's not discussed extensively in our text, but I've also included an additional reading if you'd like to see a little more background on that. But the project charter is an important step in the life of a project. It's almost like you're in the starting blocks at a running race, and that's where we take off from, and at that point the project is officially authorized. So we really look to that to be a document. Even in a social organization, I would recommend having a project charter, even if that's a simple one-page email from the head of the organization that says, this is the project, this is what it's going to accomplish, here's who the project manager is, and here's the timeline. So it lets the organization know it's a communications piece, and it officially starts the work on the project. It authorizes, and we use that term project sponsor. That's the person in the organization who is approving that the group work on this project and apply resources to it. It identifies the customer, whether that's an internal customer or an external customer, the key stakeholders, who is going to be affected by this project. It specifically identifies the project manager, and it gives them the authority to move forward with using resources and executing the project. It also documents the scope, the budget, and the time so everyone's clear on what this project is about. It also often includes a justification. Why are we doing this project? Especially on a longer project where it might be running for months or years, sometimes we forget, why are we even doing this? And maybe the situation's changed and we no longer need this project. So it's good to document that up front. This is why we're doing this. It also identifies at a very high level how we're going to go about executing the project, what methodologies we're going to use, what things we assume to be true that might change, what constraints there are that will limit how we're able to approach the project, and it also identifies any key resources, if there's people or equipment or facilities that need to be allocated to this project. These are documented. This is at a very high level, not a detailed document, but it lets everyone know what's going on. The project team will then dig into the greater details of actually executing the project, but at this point this is a communication for everyone. Now, the next step from that would be a project launch meeting. This one isn't as mandatory. I would say that a project charter of some form is critical. A project launch meeting is really a good way to get the project started, and that is right after that project charter has been issued. We bring the project team together and really launch the project. Hopefully, if it's not a virtual project, it's a project where the people are physically co-located. We can bring them together. It's a chance to communicate, to bring everybody together face to face before we potentially go out in different directions to start executing our parts of the project. We're able to discuss the schedule, the plans, what still needs to be identified and estimated, and it brings us to just the next layer of detail in the project. Very communications and orientation focused, who's doing what and who are the key players and concerns, that type of things. The outcomes should be the technical scope. So are there specific technical issues that we'll be addressing in this project? What are they? How will we face those? Who's responsible for what? And then a general outline of the schedule. We can roll that up. I'll show you in just a moment here the work breakdown structure, and we're able to look at different levels of detail in that, and we're still at a fairly high level at this point for the launch meeting. So now we break into that first big step in actually planning a project, and I brought my little elephant in here because I love that old question, you know, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time, and that's what the first big step of project management is. Once we've identified the project, how do we take on that huge animal, whether that's redesigning a space, relocating an office, launching a new product, whatever it is a big item and a critical item to our organization, and we need to start breaking that down into its component pieces. And it's a combination of art and science that I really enjoy, because it's for people to look at the big picture and understand what we're accomplishing and then be able to break it down into its components and say, okay, in order to accomplish this, we need to do these 8 things. And then to do these 8 things, we need to do these 5 things. And that's what's called the work breakdown structure. Let's take a look. I'll give you a little framework of how it works, and then we'll try one. I'll show you how that breaks out. So officially, it's determining the work element. So we're going to have the project. It's that picture. I keep thinking of this cloud out here. It's out there in the future. We know what that end state is to look like. But we're back here, and we need to determine how we're going to get there. So we're going to break it down into its components. Smaller pieces, manageable pieces, and we can illustrate that in a couple different ways. Hierarchically, meaning we're going to break it down into a way that it fits back together, almost like a puzzle. But a jigsaw puzzle, the pieces are all over the place. We're going to have a structure to it. We often use a tree structure or an outline. I'll show you both of them here in just a moment. The next level of detail is once we identify those component work activities that need to occur, we're going to assign people to those so we know who's responsible for each one, resources. We're also going to use a little coding system, which can be somewhat confusing, but if we get that set up correctly, it really helps in controlling the costs and the budget as we move through the project. And this is probably the biggest concern with work breakdown structure, is how much detail is necessary. And a good rule of thumb is that we want to break down the project enough that there's accountability, and we can look to certain people on specific activities and know that they have it under control. And then the other good rule of thumb is broken down far enough that there's appropriate budget and control, so we can know what's going on and we can know where the money was spent. If we could say, oh, the project was $100,000, where did that $100,000 go? Well, in a redesign of a space, maybe that's furnishings, construction, finishes, technology. Maybe that would be a sufficient enough breakdown. Maybe we need further detail where we need to know how much the carpet was, how much the paint was, how much the ceiling tiles cost. So we need to know the right level, and it varies by project. So let's take a look at one. I'm going to use a tree structure to illustrate this. And as you see, at our highest level, we're going to work our way down the page. Our project is to plan a family reunion. So at the highest level, we have our family reunion, and we're going to break that down because that can be a big task. And you may notice this is starting to look like an organization table, a plan for an organization, almost the same thing. And this first level here, this is our first level of breakdown, and we recognize that we need to come up with some food for this family reunion. There's going to have to be a location. Activities are going to be important, and who's going to be attending is going to be important. So we've broken this down to its first subset, which is 4. So there might be 6, there might be 8, there might be 12 at this level. In this case, 4 seems to be accurate, but if we said, oh, there's another one we need in there, and that would be, let's say, there's a lot of specific travel issues. So we could set up an additional one called travel. But in this case, let's just stick with the 4 and work with those. Now, we have the opportunity in a work breakdown structure, again, to break this down further, work breakdown structure. So in order to do this family reunion, we're going to need food, but food's kind of a big project and it's really important to a lot of us, so we're going to break food into 2 different activities, handling the caterer and deciding what the menu will be. Similar with location, the location, we're going to have it at a hotel. It's going to be a destination reunion, so somebody needs to take care of picking the which hotel, maybe visiting them, getting some prices and things like that, setting up the contract. Activities, Peggy's going to take the lead on that. We're starting to throw some names in here. They're responsible for that area. But Peggy's going to have Bill and Jim working with her. And Bill's going to take care of the games, and Jim's going to take care of the prizes. So we're starting to put some names on here. That's not as important at this point as breaking down the work into logical levels of detail. Let's go to one more level. You can see that food's pretty much under control at this level, but the hotel, well, Sheila's okay, but once we have the hotel picked, we're really probably going to need a map created, maybe some driving directions, those type of things, and Steve's going to take care of that. Games and prizes are pretty much under control at this level. The guest list, Emily's got it under control here, but look what's going on over here. When it comes to the invitations, boy, if you've ever had that task, that can really be a problem. So we're going to divide that up. Sylvia is going to find a printer who's actually going to print the invitations. We're going to need some input probably from Steve, where we're going to include the map maybe with it and what hotel is there. We might include some information about the menu. And so all that information is going to go to the printer, and Sylvia is going to take care of contracting with the printer. Then Steve's going to actually take care of getting all those envelopes addressed and stuffed and out to everyone. And we're going to divide it even one step further. And the RSVPs, Steve's still going to take care of that, but the RSVPs are just a whole animal within themselves, because we're going to have to keep track of who called back and who didn't, and do follow-ups. So we're going to break invites out into 3 different activities. So this is our high-level project, and from this might be sufficient to actually execute the project. Let's talk about this numbering. At the highest level, we actually call the highest level level 0. And then the next level down of division, level 1 and level 2, and then level 3. We could even go level 4, level 5, depending upon the complexity of the project. Another item that the project, the family reunion, is project 1.0. This is what we call a work breakdown structure numbering system. And if you go to the next level, we find that 1.1 is food, 1.2 is location, 1.3 is activities, 1.4 is guests. Let me go one more level down, and I'll show you why this is so important. We can see we go through family reunion 1, food 1.1, and then the caterer 1.11, menu 1.12. These numbering systems use the decimals, the periods, and the numbers. And what will happen is, let's go over here to games and prizes. 1.3 is activities, 1.3.1 is games, and if Bill decided he's going to rent a roulette wheel and maybe some throwing games, and the invoice comes in, the invoice would come in and say, well, what cost is this? Well, Bill would put that number on it. He'd put 3.1 on the invoice, have whoever's doing the accounting pay the invoice, and when we were all done, we could see how many invoices were related to games. Any of Jim's costs, he'll put in 1.3.2. We'll know that those are for prizes. And if we ran a report and said, well, just show me everything that's 1.3, that's activities, it would sum up all of those costs. So that numbering system, if you can picture maybe with a big corporation like Stanley Black & Decker or Hewlett-Packard, where they're developing a new product, huge amounts of costs coming from all kinds of different places, the labor, the materials, and anything related to that activity would have this number on it, and it'll allow us to do all kinds of different reporting and accountability to know where the costs of the project are going. Very powerful tool. See if we can go down a little bit further here. This is an outline form. This is the exact same project. Level 0. The family reunion project. Level 1. The first level of breakdown. Food, location, activities, and guests. The level 2 breakdown. The caterer menu and so forth. And then finally, level 3. Exact same information, just in an outline form. So we want different ways to communicate this. The beauty of using a tool like Microsoft Project software tools is once you enter your activities and how they fit together, you can display them in any way you want with a few clicks of a button. Also, if we assign the names to it, we can also do what's called a responsibility matrix. So we can clearly see that Lynn was responsible for selecting the caterer and selecting the menu items. We can use some additional coding. She's got approval level A on that. Mickey actually is the support person on selecting the caterer. Sheila's responsible for it. So the responsibility matrix identifies who's approving, who is doing it, and who's the backup in case we need extra support on it. So another valuable tool in project management planning is to be able to have this kind of view, and you can let a person like Sylvia know, Sylvia, here's what you're responsible for. And she can focus in on those activities and the timing of those activities. Final thing I'd like to mention is project integration. Project integration is making sure all the pieces come together in concert. And there's 2 levels to that. First off, the project and the organization. The organization, whether that's a social club or a family or a corporation, the project is going on within that organization, and it needs to be integrated. It borrows resources, it's taking time and facilities, and it needs to take those and send them back. So there has to be an integration, there has to be a synchronization between those. And at the same time, there's also integration within the project. And we've started to talk about a work breakdown structure, so that's moving us towards a project management plan, the activities, what needs to be done by who and when. But there also needs to be a communications plan. What has to be communicated out to the stakeholders and when? What needs to be purchased, a procurement plan, and when? What's monitored and controlled? What human resources do we need? So there are many sub-plans within this, and all of those plans need to be integrated together. There's different people running those, and the project manager needs to integrate and keep all of those kind of in harmony like an orchestra. So project integration is talking about keeping all of those separate pieces, because we don't want to interrupt those people. We want them to focus on their activity, but at the same time we want all those activities flowing together, moving us towards completion of the project. So a lot of topics this module, but we're going to dive in and get moving on them. Critical element is getting that work breakdown structure in place and being able to visualize moving from the project into specific work activities that can be executed.